The medieval era was certainly an interesting time to be a king. These royals were revered and looked up to by their subjects to offer solutions. The king was the most important person in the kingdom, as he was tasked with protecting his land and people from invasion. If you've ever wondered what a medieval king did on a typical day, then you are in luck, because in today's video, we're talking about what a day in the life of a medieval king was like. So, let's get started. Welcome to Untold History Guy, where you can find fun, fascinating, and sometimes shocking chronicles of history. Join us as we journey back and uncover the untold truths of the past. Personal encounter with a medieval king. Christine de Pizan provides the most accurate account of how the day-to-day life of a medieval king looked. She had a great vantage point to tell this account since her father, Tommaso de Pizan, worked in the royal household as a personal astrologer and physician for King Charles V of France. Starting the day right. The king's day generally started with him rising from his bed not so early, since he would typically wake up between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. We could say that the medieval king was not a morning person. During the medieval period, religion was so much part of everyone's daily life. In fact, it was a daily presence from the day you were born to the day you died. Thus, the king began his day with a prayer before engaging in anything else. After the prayer, the king would interact with his family and even make small talk and joke with his servants. Being a king meant that everything had to be done for him. Thus, he would get dressed, groomed, and outfitted as per the demands of the specific day's programs. Nothing gets more royalty than this. After getting ready for the day, the chaplain, a distinguished person and respectable priest, would bring the breviary to the medieval royalty and assist him in saying his hours following the canonical day of the calendar. The church during the medieval age was more than a religion and was viewed as a way of life and a category of thinking. Thus, the king would attend the mass around 8 a.m. that was celebrated every day with ceremonious, glorious singing. The people's king. After finalizing the mass, he would leave the chapel and go to his courtyard. Here, he would be met by all kinds of people, poor and rich, men and women, widows and widowers, ladies or maidens, and anyone else who had a problem or needed the king's listening ear. The people made their petitions to him, hoping that he would be kind enough to solve their problems. Most medieval kings were very kind and loving to their people and would stay in the courtyard for some time to listen to the supplications. The royalty would respond charitably to the cases that seemed urgent, reasonable, and piteous. For the cases that seemed doubtful, he would treat them with skepticism, refusing to provide an instant solution. Rather, he would turn them over to the master of request to look further into the case. On to business. The king's next order of business was meeting the royal council, the most high-ranking individuals in the king's government. The royal council guided the king in making decisions and advising him on different matters, from running the kingdom to interacting with other kings. After meeting the royal council, the king would then meet his council. The meeting with the council did not happen every day, but only on the appointed days. One of the most interesting and surprising facts is that the king would only meet his council for a little over an hour. Seems like the king already had his work figured out and did not need to spend much time talking about it. The royalty would also meet some clergymen and the noblemen of his bloodline. Nobles came from noble heritage and included the knights, landowners, and people under the king or related to him by blood or royal service. Most nobles were warriors who defended the kingdom by fighting and taking the lead in administration duties, so the king needed to meet with them to ensure the empire ran smoothly. If I was from the medieval era, I would definitely be a nobleman. I mean, who wouldn't want to be close to the ruler? Nourishing the body and soul. After concluding the meetings, the king would return to the castle for a late morning meal. To remain fit and in good shape, he only took healthy meals. He was not keen on elaborate, complex, or large meals, thus mealtime did not take long. He also drank fine, simple, and clear wine, well cut and light in color. Well, we definitely share a liking for good wine. He only took a small quantity of wine and did not mix any varieties. And to make his soul happy, the king would also listen to stringed instruments at the end of the meals, as the music was calming, helping him relax after a busy morning. What a lovely way to find his inner calm and peace. One would think the king decided to call it a day and rest awaiting the following day, but that is not the case. After finishing the food and rejoicing in the spirit with the sweetest music, people would join the king in his court. Among the people at the court would be noblemen, foreign ambassadors, and knights, both foreign and from his kingdom. And more business. Here, the king received news of what was happening in his kingdom and other far places, sometimes details and occurrences of his battles or other kingdoms' wars. He also arranged the things that should be done based on the information provided to him or promised to offer a solution once he met with the council. He also accorded favors, prohibited any unlawful or unreasonable proposals, gave respectable gifts to his high-ranking visitors, signed letters, answered the most reasonable requests, and announced the vacant administrative positions. He engaged with these tasks for about 2 hours, after which he left and went to rest for approximately 1 hour. All work with no play makes a medieval royalty a dull king. After the rest, it would now be about 3 p.m. The king spent most afternoons engaging in recreational activities. Some days, he would spend the afternoon with his closest companions doing different things, such as looking at his treasures and jewelry. The king put time aside for leisure activities to ensure the excessive demands of the kingdom didn't harm his health. After spending most of his time occupied with demanding affairs, it's wise that the king had time to reset and re-energize. The king then went to vespers or evening prayers, as was the custom. After prayers, he would sometimes visit the garden if it was summertime. Sometimes the queen and children would join him for an intimate time as a family. Being a kind and social king, he would talk to the women in the court and even ask how their families and children were doing. At other times, he would receive gifts, ranging from clothes of gold, exotic jewels, velvet, or even armaments, which the connoisseurs assigned to receiving his gifts would inspect. I bet the connoisseurs always had a blast seeing so many exotic and beautiful gifts. During the winter, when he couldn't go into his garden, the king would occupy himself with stories. He would have someone read fine stories aloud for him from the philosophers' wise sayings, the Holy Scriptures, deeds of the Romans, or other such readings until it was time for supper. The king, like everyone else in the kingdom, would also engage in games from time to time. One of the popular games in the medieval period was board games. When the weather was not conducive for garden visits, indoor games saved the day. Particularly, medieval kings played chess, which was popularly referred to as the royal game. Finally done with the day. The king took his place for a high meal early. After having his fill, he would spend a short time in recreation, primarily interacting with his knights before going to sleep. Well, if you ask me, that schedule feels like a lot of work for medieval royalty, especially for people today who are more accustomed to going to work and specializing in a specific task throughout the day. Lessons learned. Looking at the king's schedule, one can deduce that he spent his day in 3 social settings. One is where he interacted with all sorts of people or the general public. The second is where he would be with his close companions and family. And the third, he would be alone, although the servants by law would be nearby. The king ensured that he was seen by the commoners and high-ranking individuals in his kingdom and from other territories. He ensured he was available for everyone to communicate justice to his people and let them know that while he was the highest judge in the territory, he still cared for the lowest and took their matters into his own hands. Also, it's clear that the medieval king's daily routine was divided into 3 main components: matters of the kingdom, prayers and gaining knowledge, and recreation and leisure. The various elements formed a unity in the king's life. By living a life following a strict schedule and specific order, the medieval royalties managed their health and gave an example of a political life. Although single components, such as rest and recreation, cannot be termed as political, brought together, they formed the order of day-to-day life of the medieval kings. The day in the life of a medieval royalty leaves a vital lesson that an ordered life is an important requirement for any form of governance or ruling. Additionally, governing empires and kingdoms requires high levels of discipline and self-efficacy. So, what do you think about the day-to-day life of medieval royalty? Do you think they lived an exciting life? Please let us know in the comments, and don't forget to check out our other videos and learn more about the medieval period. Thanks for watching.